My name is Tom Levine, and I'm here for Cornerstone's Tech Tuesday. Today, we'll be covering some details on different web browsers and why or not you'd want to use one over another, and even what a browser is in general. Also, why you may want to switch browsers if you're using one that's kind of been natively installed on your device. So without further ado, let's get into some of the things I want to cover before we get started. Just some general housekeeping and notes. First, if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the question box below. I might answer it in the middle of the presentation. I might wait till the end. It depends on how relevant your question is to the topic that I'm covering immediately, but I will get to your questions, no worries. Also, if you would like to follow along with the presentation, feel free to download today's slideshow from the handout section below. There aren't very many notes on it today. I know that for our last one, there were quite a few more, but for today's presentation, it's mostly going to be a walkthrough, so there aren't very many notes. Also, don't forget to connect with us here at Cornerstone. Feel free to follow us on social media and subscribe to our weekly Monday Minute newsletter. It contains the latest Cornerstone carrier and industry updates and news. Also, feel free to give me a call if you have a question that you didn't want to cover in today's presentation, but you thought might be relevant. My number's on the screen there, as well as my email. If you do email me, though, I filter by a subject line, so just include Tech Tuesday and whatever you send me on the subject, and I will be sure to get to it. Also, don't forget, if you haven't yet, to register for AGB. AGB is our digital broker suitcase, and it's available from the URL that's on your screen right now, www.crnstone.com/AGB to register. If you do want to get to AGB directly, just go to www.agbohio.com, and you can log in from there. It is our new and improved one-stop shop for our broker partners, and we're very excited about it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the AGB support team at agbsupport@crnstone.com. And last but not least, before we get into the presentation, please don't forget to register for our cash incentive program. The more you sell, the more you can possibly earn in bonus. Any sale between January 1st, 2023 and December 31st, 2023 effective that you sell, you will earn points that bring you closer to a $7,000 cash prize. Feel free to register today online at the URL on the screen, www.crnstone.com/cash-incentive-program. The exclamation mark, you don't need to include it, I wouldn't. So that being said, let's talk about some of the browsers we're going to be talking about today. First off, Google Chrome. And the reason it's first is because this list is ordered by market share. Now, if you download the presentation today, at least the slides, I do have a link in there for where I grabbed these rankings and where I grabbed these market share ratings. And there are some interesting notes on that site. So if you're interested in reading a bit more outside of this lecture, please feel free to download the presentation and then follow that link. It does have some interesting info there. But first, let's talk about Google Chrome. Now, Google Chrome is one of the browsers on this list that is not native to any operating system. And what that means is you have to download and install it to use it as a browser. But surprisingly, it's got 77.03% market share globally, which means it is dominating the market as far as web browsers are concerned. It actually is dominating partly because it made its source code, the bit that makes the web browser work, online for developers to use, basically. A lot of the other browsers out there are based on Google Chrome, and that's because of the Chromium engine. We'll mention that a little later on in this list, especially for Microsoft, but because it's just so widely used and a lot of sites tend to, be made to work with it because of the market share, it's just good for most other browsers to incorporate parts of the Chrome engine anyway. Next, we have Safari, and Safari is a Mac-only browser. The reason it's on this list is because it has 8.87% market share. And even though I can't show it off on my Windows computer here today, I will say it's not a bad browser. It's very bare bones, it's very basic. It gets the job Mac only continued for Windows, and me break in and out. For some reason, we've been having some network connection issues. So I'm going to turn off the webcam now to try and improve that. Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me loud and clear today. Again, sorry about that. We have some weird internet issues right now. So we might have some times where you see me in the presentation, sometimes you won't. But like I was saying, Safari is a very wonderful browser. It's just Mac only. And the reason that it's Mac only is because it's actually made by Apple. Apple's the one who produced Safari, Apple's the one who manages Safari, and so it's only available on Mac and iPhone products as well as their tablets and basically any Apple product you see. Mm. So because of that, they have 8.87% of the market share as far as the web browsing market is concerned. So something that's neat, if you use it, it's not bad, just something you want to keep in mind. The one thing I will mention about Safari, though, is that Google actually did an audit of their code last year and found that even though they tout being a very secure browser, there were some code issues that allowed cookies, which are trackers on the web, to track you across multiple sites, which was a feature that Safari kind of touted as being one of their differentiating things, was that it wouldn't let cookies do that. This has since been corrected, and Google hasn't, come out and said, "Oh, they're lying to you" or anything. So I'm pretty sure that they've corrected this issue, but it's just something to keep in mind, even though it is a browser on a Mac, that doesn't mean it's 100% secure with your data. The next browser, is terms of market share, is Firefox. And Firefox is kind of like Google Chrome. The difference is they just have a very strong emphasis on not sharing the user data that they take. A lot of web browsers will take the data that they see you using their service to access and then sell that online. Now, I'm not talking about, your usernames and passwords. I'm talking about your browsing history. And this is actually a pretty common practice throughout the industry. Firefox does this to a limited extent as well, but they try not to sell anything that would be, excessively revealing about you. For example, Google Chrome might sell your browsing habits to advertisers indirectly so that they can target ads to you. Firefox tries not to do that as much. That's generally what I'm saying when I say it's limited use of data harvesting. And finally, we have Microsoft Edge. Microsoft Edge is Microsoft's current default browser. It actually replaced Internet Explorer. So if you're using Internet Explorer, you are now officially out of date as far as Microsoft is concerned. It was actually based on the Chromium engine. So it does a lot of the same exact things and is laid out very similarly to Google Chrome. It has 5.83% of the global market share as well as far as browsers are concerned. So before I leave this page, now that I've mentioned all of these browsers, what even is a browser? Well, a browser is an application that you can launch on pretty much any computing device nowadays that allows you to access the internet. Now, it doesn't allow you to access all of the internet most of the time, but it allows you to access the parts of the internet that most consumers use day to day. This would be things like, Google. This would be going out to Facebook. This would be pretty much anything you use the internet for that isn't directly through like one app or another. And for instance, if you're opening Facebook on your smartphone, you might have a Facebook app. But the web browser would let you go directly to www.facebook.com, and then you'd have to log in through there and view everything. It's how most people interact with the web. It's also how brokers, and myself included, access websites for places like Aetna or Anthem's producer toolbox, the things that they don't have direct apps made for, but have features that are associated on the World Wide Web. Now, there are a lot of different browsers and a lot of different advantages. So let's talk briefly about the two that you have to actually install that are on this list, that being Google Chrome and Firefox, which are this logo right here for Google Chrome and this one for Firefox. This logo right here is Safari, and this one right here is Microsoft Edge. So let's erase those drawings and talk a little bit about why you might want to download Chrome. First reason, it's incredibly popular. Like we saw on the last slide, Chrome has about 77% of the market share globally. And as a result of that, websites have optimized their websites for Chrome. What that means is websites online operate on a lot of different little pieces of code called codecs. These codecs are basically like sublanguages that let computers interpret what's being displayed on the website. A lot of websites optimize specifically for Chrome because it's so popular. In addition to that, it has a number of integrated web apps and extensions that are used to customize your web experience. You don't need to have any of these installed by default, but they are very, very useful, and they can add to your web experience. We'll be covering a few of those when we do our little walkthrough of Chrome here in a second. In addition to that, because of them being so compatible with most websites, a lot of other browsers that are not Chrome actually use the Chromium engine. It just supplies them with a very good set of codecs that most websites are using. Even, places like Firefox and Mozilla, as well as obviously, Windows has jumped on the band of that. So it's pretty much always going to be compatible with websites that you're trying to access, and 90% of the time it'll work for you. But why would someone want to avoid Chrome? Well, people tend to want to avoid Chrome for the exact same reason they download our next browser, Firefox. 9 times out of 10, you're installing Firefox as a more data secure alternative to installing Chrome. Now, I say more data secure, not completely data secure. And that's because Firefox, like many other companies, still use your data to give to advertisers and other people. The difference is in the way they do it, as well as how transparent they are about what data they're giving. You can request from Google that they tell you what kind of data they're sharing with advertisers and they are selling. But it is a process. You have to go to their website, you have to request what data they're selling, and then they'll get back to you eventually. With Firefox, they're very transparent about what data they're selling, and they're very transparent about how that data is being used. You can just go to their website and they have links that they tell you basically exactly what they're doing with your data. It's very transparent and it's kind of nice in my opinion. If you use Firefox, pretty much it's because you're trying to get all of the same features as Chrome, just in a way that a larger corporation isn't taking your data. You saw the difference in market share before. Firefox has under 10% market share globally. So instead of giving all of your data to Google, it takes your data and gives it to a smaller company that's a little less powerful. Helps diversify the market as well and helps competition and innovation for future browsers. Additionally, they have one unique feature besides the same sort of apps and extensions that you'd find on the Chrome store, and that is Pocket. Pocket is kind of like MSN, if you remember that from using Internet Explorer. MSN is Microsoft News Network's homepage. Essentially, it's just Microsoft's homepage for whatever browser you install. But the difference is Pocket is not just the Firefox launch page. It basically sees what sort of articles you like reading and then recommends articles within that similar vein. For instance, if you like a lot of science-based articles, it'll start recommending a lot of science-based journals for you and things of that nature. Plus, you're able to save articles and organize them into folders. So it can be very useful if you're trying to just read and generally increase your education of what's going on around you online. But that's why you would go ahead and actually install those two browsers that are not native to whatever device you're running. Let's go ahead and actually walk through some of these. So as you can see, I have Chrome, Edge, and Firefox installed on this machine. And we're going to go ahead and start with Chrome because it is the most popular. You can download this by just Googling Google Chrome download link, and it will pop up. I'm going to actually go ahead and do this now once the Cornerstone website loads. And if I just type into the URL bar right up here, download Chrome, you see this link here to google.com for downloading Chrome today. If I click on that, it can't be reached because of my firewall settings, but that would lead you directly to installing Chrome. The reason it didn't work probably, and we'll see if this gets around it, yes, is because that first link was an ad link on Google, but you can download Chrome pretty much directly. Just go to www.google.com/Chrome/ and you'll get here. From there, you can download Chrome for your device. Now, Chrome is pretty much the standard browser nowadays. So we're not going to go too in depth about what specifically you can do with Chrome, but we are going to walk through some of the settings as well as how to use the bookmarks features and how to actually get the best out of your experience from Chrome. The first thing about Chrome that I would note is, like most other browsers nowadays, this URL bar right here, which is what you type in the web address to get to anywhere online on, is also a search bar. You can see this right here. It is open with Google. And if I click on that little search icon there, it opens up this sidebar. Now, this is kind of a newer feature to Chrome as far as I'm concerned. I didn't really utilize this feature much before last year, actually. But what it does do is it lets you search in like a side pane. So like, for instance, let's search Cornerstone and hit enter. I have this little search bar up over here now that shows me a search online for Cornerstone in the little side window of Chrome. The way I did that, I'm gonna close it out here, is I just clicked on this icon right up here that says search in side panel. One other thing you can do is you can actually show and hide your side panel up over here. And in the settings, you can change what side of your screen that side panel pops up on. Additionally, you can hit the share this link page to, or button, I guess, to copy links and share them directly that way. For instance, I'm going to copy this link here, delete my URL, and hit Control V. And what that does is it pastes what I copied originally, being the URL for this web address. And if I hit enter, it goes there natively. All of these buttons down here are actually bookmarks as well. And there are a few different ways you can get to the bookmarks. The most common way, at least the way that I get there, is I click on these three little drop-down dots, and then I go to bookmarks. From there, I can look through all of the bookmarks that I've made, and I can go pretty much anywhere I've bookmarked directly. To bookmark a page, you just hit the little star icon and then name the bookmark. For instance, download Chrome, if I can type. Then you get to choose what folder of your bookmarks you will save these to. A lot of people just have one, and that's completely fine. Don't feel like you have to use this feature. But one of the things that I like to do with my folders is I like to organize the types of bookmarks I have. For instance, if I'm working on a project for Tech Tuesday and I'm doing some research, 9 times out of 10, I'll bookmark all of the pages that I need for that. And I will make a folder, title it the name of the webinar that I'm doing, and then save all of those bookmarks to that folder. That way I can just pull up all of the web addresses that are very related apps you use that I'm doing. Another way that you could use this is if you have some apps for browsers or for applications to try and utilize different enrollment softwares. You can just make a bookmark folder titled enrollment software or for Anthem or for Aetna and save all of those bookmarks to the, excuse me, to those folders so they're easily accessed. You save this under bookmarks now. I have this new bookmark here called Download Chrome. We're actually going to go to a different bookmark that I have right now called the Chrome Web Store to show off how you would add apps to Google Chrome. Now, I can't do that personally to this version of Chrome just because of how we have things set up here. But we can browse through some of the recommended browser extensions. And I will cover one or two of the popular ones. And actually, the three that I was going to cover are in the recommended for you section of this store. The is kind of reads the site you're accessing, and then from there, it will take information from that site and figure out whether or not it knows there's a coupon on that site when you check out, if you're online shopping, and tries to save you as much money as it can. Now, a lot of people think they sell the data that they get from this and your browsing habits to actually pay for things, and that's not true at all. The way they make their money is actually a little more obscure. What they do is they make deals with companies to offer those ads, and then by offering them to you, they get a portion of the purchase that you make. So they're not actually, trying to sell your data to companies. They're just making money off of the companies they partner with, at least from how I understand it. Another good one that you could install is uBlock Origin. What that does is it makes it pretty easy to block incoming requests that are going to and from your browser. If you're a bit of a security nut like I am, this will basically let you pick and choose what sites you're giving access to your data. The last one that I like is just a little bit of utility. It's Google Translate natively within the app. What that does, and I'm going to click on it just to see if it'll let me give you a little walkthrough. Here we go. It has an overview. Basically, you highlight a section of text, click on the translate icon next to it, and it'll translate into a different language. Very useful if you're not a native English speaker using the web for English, or if you have a VPN and you're browsing on a site that isn't really natively in English, you can use that to translate the site. So very useful. Now, a lot of installed applications will be shown right over here next to the URL line, and to use them, you just click on their icons. If I hit Add to Chrome, I'll see if it actually lets me do this. Probably won't. Yeah, I don't think it's going to do that. Oh, it actually did. Wonderful. But as you can see, it popped up under this Extensions tab. And that's pretty much how you will access the translation options. If I go to www.crnstone.com, and I'm going to highlight a portion of text here. If I wanted to translate it now, I could click on my extensions, Google Translate, and choose the language I want to translate it into. For instance, let's say, and translate this page. And now the web page is translated into Czech. All I did was click on the drop down here. If I wanted to revert it, I just hit Show Original, and now we're back into English. So these are the kinds of things that extensions can do. If you ever want to uninstall an extension, you just click on the drop down right here and hit Remove from Chrome. And you hit Remove, and then it's gone. Now, additionally, I did want to walk through some of the settings in here. And the way you get to settings in pretty much any browser nowadays is you click on the utility icon on the upper part. For that, in Chrome, it's 3 little dots, and then you go to settings. And it has a lot of settings you can choose from and look through. First off, there's you and Google. And what that does is it shows all the different integrated services that you could be using through Google with Chrome. Things like syncing your services across your devices that have Google installed, or you can get smart recommendations and personalizations from your devices with turning on Google Sync. You can also install like your Google address here, and you can customize your Chrome profile directly from the browser, as well as importing bookmarks and settings from other browsers. Now, a lot of other browsers have this setting as well when you install them. For this one, for instance, if I click Install from other browsers, it'll detect what other browsers I have on my computer, and then I can say install my ones from Edge and hit Import. And it'll just natively take all of my browsing data over, all of my bookmarks. Now that notably does not take over all of my website logins. It just takes over my favorite settings. So just so you know, it doesn't actually let you log into other websites. That would be autofill. Now from autofill here, there is a password manager. So you can enter in your usernames and passwords into Chrome and it'll automatically remember them and you can enter them. They also have the ability to store payment methods. So you can enter in like credit card information into this section and it'll save your credit card information to autofill on websites when you're checking out. Lastly, you can do the same sort of thing from the Chrome browser directly with your addresses. This would be for like Google Maps, and you could fill in addresses here just by hitting the add button. You also have the ability to manually change your privacy and security settings. You can review privacy with Chrome directly. The reason they did this is because of addressing concerns from people like me who use Firefox. Additionally, it can help keep you safe from data breaches, bad extensions, and more, mostly by notifying you. You just hit check now, and it'll tell you if you've had a data breach. Browsing history directly from here, as well as monitor and change your cookie settings. You can also use sandboxing, which is something that I think is probably a little technical for this demonstration, but kind of what it does is it lets you browse the web from individual applications that cut off the app from making changes to your computer. It can be useful, it's something nice, but it's not something that's insanely necessary for most people day to day. Another thing that I wanted to cover actually is performance. Now, this is something that Google has added, which basically tells Chrome how to actively manage the memory it's using on your computer. Chrome used to be a big memory hog, and it used to basically be something that took so much of your computer's resources for a browser it was almost laughable. These days, that's not the case, and it's because of this memory saver feature. What it does is if a tab is inactive, so you just have it open, you're not really messing with it, then it'll switch the resources to the ones you're actually working on. It makes sure Chrome is fast, it keeps your other programs running well, and it just makes sure that your active sites are always going to get priority. You can also change the appearance of the browser, which is something you can do with most browsers nowadays. You can open up the themes in the Chrome Web Store, which is where we were before, or just click on this link. And it will show you different views of how you can have Chrome set up. Most of these are free. Some of them are paid. But for example, this Stargazers one. If I click on Stargazers, hit add to Chrome, it's going to take it a second to install. But basically, it changed the overall look of Google Chrome. Now, I can hit undo here to undo it, or you can go to the app page and just say no. You go into settings on appearance, and then you can hit reset to default, and that'll reset it to default Google Chrome. But it is nice that you can kind of change the look of Chrome overall. You can also change your font size settings here. So you can actually click on the font size drop down here and change. Now, we do actually have more of a comment than a question. Google doesn't have the performance tab. And my recommendation to you, Jim, is to actually update your Chrome to the most recent version of Chrome is the browser you're using. I believe that's under probably system. I know it's available from one of these settings. Possibly from you and Google, but you can check and update Google Chrome directly. We'll probably go back in and cover where you can do that at the end of the presentation, Jim, but you can do that. I'd recommend just updating and making sure you're running the most recent version of the browser. One other thing is I know that this feature of Chrome with the performance tab is something that was kind of but it is possible. Okay, you have the up-to-date version of Chrome. Jim, I promise I will look into that and get back to you as soon as I can. I should have your email address that was registered here, and I will get you some more in-depth instruction shortly. I promise I will get back to you and respond with that. Anyway, you can also change your default search browser that is used through Chrome. You can do that with the search bar that you're using. DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is a company, but what they do is they don't actually track your search history. So if I change this to DuckDuckGo, then we're to type in like, let's say, Cornerstone. See how it has this DuckDuckGo search? If I click on it here, then it searched with a little DuckDuckGo ad over here saying your search history is private, and you can add your extension to help, keep your data private from Chrome as well. Now, the last one that I'm going to cover is just making Google your default browser. Almost every browser has this link nowadays, and it's linked right under here, titled Default Browser. If I were to hit Make Default, then it would update my browser settings on my computer, so whenever I open a link, I can also actually change the startup pages and home pages here as well. All I do is click the On Startup tab, click the Open Specific Page or Set of Pages, and I can add a new page from this link down here, and I can remove pages from right up here. For instance, if I remove my Cornerstone page, set it to open a specific set of pages, and change that to www.google.com, hit Add, and then exit out. If I open Google Chrome now, it will open to Google instead of crnstone.com. Now, the next web browser I'm going to cover is Firefox, and it's very similar to Chrome as far as usability. The look is a little bit different, and you do actually have a slightly different view of most things, but the functionality is pretty much entirely the same. You have a URL up here, Cornerstone, or Cornerstone, and hit enter. Site. And if I were just to type insurance, I'm going to hit Google. Then it will search insurance on Google. So pretty similar, just a little bit different as far as usability is concerned. And I'm going to block that. It also, one notable difference, has a few of these additional icons that were not available actually. The first is blocking information and location data on this website. If you can see this icon right up here, if I click it, then I can change the it natively blocks most things, and I can just choose whether or not I want to give it permission to access some of my data. It also gives me this little lock icon, which tells me that this is a secured connection. It uses HTTPS, which means it's just a secure web link, and that's how I can tell that it's a secure connection to the site. I can also directly clear my cookies from the URL as well. Lastly, I can click on protections, and this tells me kind of how my site is interacting with my data. I can have enhanced tracking protection on, which is what I do for most sites. But what that does is it protects my data from being tracked. It protects people like Google from knowing exactly where I am all the time. Additionally, we have this setting here, which is Pocket. What Pocket is it's what I kind of mentioned before, kind of like a homepage for MSN, except you're allowed to also link different websites that you follow and get through. You can register for an account here, and obviously I don't have an account registered on this, so I can't do a full walkthrough of it. But essentially what it lets you do is it lets you access and save articles, videos, and pages from Firefox to collections, similarly to what we were doing with bookmarks. Although you can also use bookmarks as well in the exact same way that you would with Chrome. There is a keyboard shortcut, Control-D, that you can use, where you can click on the star, and as you can see, this bookmark page looks very similar to Google's. All you do is name it. Insurance Google search is pretty good. And then you can choose the location. I'm going to put it in other bookmarks. And then you can actually tag it. What that does is it makes things pull up with keywords. So for instance, GS insurance. And then it saved bookmarks. To access my bookmarks, I click the menu, which in Firefox is 3 lines instead of 3 dots, and then go to Bookmarks. Now, from here, I can go to Manage Bookmarks, and I get a full list of all of my bookmarks. If I search up here, GSINS, then the GS insurance tag that I just included makes that search that I just did pop up here. I can also kind of browse it very similarly to a file explorer if you use that to figure out what has kind of what added. Or what I mean is you can browse through all the different folders you've created for your bookmarks to kind of figure out where things are, as well as just looking through everything directly. For instance, if I go to downloads, it'll show all my recent downloads, but there are none. If I go to tags, it'll show me what tags I've actually typed up for all of my different bookmarks. And then I can also look through all of my different bookmarks that I have set here directly. You can also add new tabs, new windows, new private windows, access your browsing history directly from here, as well as get access to Mozilla's version of Firefox, or not Firefox, sorry, Mozilla's version of apps and add-ins. One of the ones that I like to use actually is right up here, Privacy Badger. What it does is it blocks invisible trackers and spy ads that follow you around the web. It's one of the ones that I pretty much install immediately the moment that I get Firefox on machine. Now, in addition to that, they have Enhancer for YouTube, which is somewhat useful. It adds in ad block, adds in features like cinema mode, but a lot of those are kind of native to YouTube right now, so I don't bother with it. And you can also access different themes and everything. This is just my recommendations tab on my manager, but if you want to look at other extensions, you can just click on the extension setting. I have the Cisco WebEx extension right here that I already have installed. And what that does is just lets me use Firefox for WebEx meetings. So pretty straightforward. You can also have search by image apps, which I don't use because Google has a pretty good one, as well as YouTube audio, which is just turning YouTube into a podcast essentially, and a grammar and spell checker that are natively directly here. You can also hit find more add-ons to essentially get to Firefox add-ins and extension store. Very similar to the Google store that I mentioned before, but it is for Firefox. You also have themes similar to Google, so you can change the way that your browser looks. If I just hit enable, I now have the system theme, which basically just matches the operating system settings from Windows. Or I could use Purple Night and hit add, and now I have a different look to my browser as well. The last thing that is slightly different are plugins, and these are kind of those codecs that I mentioned before. Normally, if you go to a site and it has a codec that Firefox doesn't have, it'll prompt you to download it, and then that will be enabled right here. If it's broken, then it might tell you, hey, we need to use this specific codec, and you can find different add-ons and codecs from Firefox right here. So it makes it pretty versatile. It's not universal. It's not like it'll work for 100% every codec, but it works for most. And that's one of the things I appreciate about Firefox. So let's go ahead and change back to our default. The way I'm going to do this is by simply disabling the theme that I had installed. All I did was I clicked on the disable button, and now I'm back to my basic Firefox search. And I'm going to close out of my tabs. Actually, there was one other thing I meant to show you on Firefox as well, and it's that you can change your home page very similarly to how you can do with Google. The way I'm going to do that, though, is I'm going to click on this drop down here and go to my settings. And then from there, I'm going to hit home. One of the things that I can do here, and you can do it in Google as well if you just keep adding web pages to where we were before, I'm going to change my homepage URL to www.cornerstone.com. And then I'm going to close out. Now when I open up Firefox, it should load cornerstone.com instead of Google. And there we go. Now, the last browser we're going to cover is Microsoft Edge, and it's very similar to Chrome. It just might not look that way at first. Let's go ahead and open it up. And the first thing most people notice when they open it up that is very different from Chrome is this sidebar right over here. What this is called is, it's basically a system tray. So if you've used Windows products before, it's very similar to if you hit this little message notification over here, it opens up the notification sidebar. It's very similar to that, or kind of like a toolbar as well. What this does is it integrates different apps into your browser. For instance, right here, it has Outlook integrated. If I hit the search bar, it does things very similarly to what Google was doing at the sidebar, how I can just search the web automatically. The only difference is for this browser, it's going to default to searching Bing, which is Microsoft search engine. If I search Microsoft, hit enter, I have my search right over here. I get a bunch of different Microsoft links from Bing. I'm going to hit close. One other thing you can do is you can use the URL line very similarly to most other browsers. You can search. For instance, if I search Cornerstone or CBISA and just enter, it natively does a Bing search. And I have cbisa.com, CBISA login, Lionsoft, a lot of links related to CBISA. But if I type www. That's how it knows that I'm looking for a URL or web page, and I can just click it from my history. One unique feature is that if I click the read aloud on this page setting right here, then it'll, I'm turning that off because it was very loud on my end, but it will actually read web pages to you, which can be very useful if you have bad eyesight or if you're trying to read some very fine print at the bottom of a web page. You just highlight a set of text. For instance, you can count on Cornerstone and either mess up like I did and click the read, or you just right click and you can hit the read aloud section and it'll read that aloud. It is a little clunky and I'm not the best at interacting with it because I don't normally, but that's something that is a unique feature to Edge. Additionally, you can favorite web pages, which is exactly like using folders. If I click on the favorite icon, it'll let me name my favorite and choose the folder that I'm saving it to. And then I can hit done or I can hit more. More lets you kind of control the favorite a little bit more. It'll let you edit the URL a little bit manually. And it will also let you do things like make a new folder and say example. And if I click example and hit save, now my bookmark is saved there. If I click on my favorites right up here, it's the same thing as bookmarks. If I click down example, I now have the new one that I saved right here, this bookmark. One other unique feature, however, about Edge versus Chrome is collections. Now, collections operate the exact same way as bookmark folders. It's just a little bit intuitive. And you're also able to actually get snippets of text and add them to collections. If I'm working on a new project and I'm using this browser, I often just hit Start New Collection. We're going to call this one Sample Collection. I can add the current page just by clicking Add Current Page. And if I were to go to Google and let's say do the same search we did before, Sierra and Stone, and I'm sorry, I said Google, I meant Bing. And let's say I want to highlight some of this text and I thought it was relevant and I wanted to save it for my research. I can right click, add to collections, sample collection. And it'll give me a little notice that it was added. And if I what's different about this sample selection, but I want to kind of show you, I close out of that window and go to sample collection and select the link that I had that highlighted text from. It'll take me directly to where that highlighted section of text was. So it's kind of very similar to bookmarks, but it's a little more advanced in the way it's used. I think it's really useful, especially if you're trying to get specific samples of text from web pages, but it's a pretty nice feature. You can also sign up with a Microsoft account to start tracking points and earning rewards through there. What that means is essentially what Microsoft likes to do to try to get people to buy into its stuff is as you search and as you use their products, you gain points. Those points can then be used to either donate to charities. It's not a lot. It normally, for me at least, amounts to about $5 a year. Or you can earn points to redeem those for things like gift cards or other little, treats. So if you sign up for a profile and you start searching using Bing, that's something that you might start being able to do. Finally, if you click on this drop down here, the 3 dots side by side instead of 3 lines or 3 dots vertically, then you're able to actually access some more of this information. This is just the general settings window, same sort of thing as in the other 2 browsers we covered. The main difference here is you can access your Microsoft rewards, which are those points I was mentioning earlier, directly from here. You also have direct links for things like extensions, reading the page aloud, and what we're going to cover is settings. Now, the interesting thing about this is the settings is kind of a cross between Firefox settings page and the, excuse me. Oh, goodness, I forgot to take my allergy medicine today. The Google Chrome setting page. If I hit privacy and searches, I can quickly control the type of privacy that I'm trying to apply. The thing is, it's not as secure as Mozilla. All of the information that you search, all of the information that you use on this browser goes directly to Microsoft. Then Mozilla is probably the way to go as far as the browsers that we're covering today. But you can control very strictly how other people get to see your data here. Pretty directly. You can also choose to directly clear your browsing data and choose to send do not track requests and allow sites to check if you have payment methods saved directly from this privacy tab, as well as sending Microsoft your diagnostic data, applying for personalized advertising, and controlling what type of websites you want to have access to. Microsoft Defender Smart Screen is pretty decent, but it's not the best. You can choose what type of websites you're able to access. HTTPS is pretty much the standard nowadays. It's basically just secure online URLs. It creates a tunnel between you and the website and makes it so people trying to intercept your data can't. That's a little technical for this presentation, but I promise we will be covering it in a future presentation as well. You also have typo protection, so it'll warn you if it thinks you mistyped a URL. For instance, www.google.com. it's going to not recommend anything here, and that's because it's not the best at detecting whether or not you've typed something in wrong. And they're still working on a lot of these features, but it is a also direct option to use secure DNS to specify how you look up network addresses for websites. This isn't something I would normally mess with. It can kind of mess with how you browse the web if you're not careful. It also lets you figure out what type of services you want to opt into that Microsoft might provide. If you click on the Appearance tab, you can actually customize how things look directly. You can discover more themes online from a Microsoft website, but you can also just select some native ones they've got installed. They've got a wide variety of native themes, which are kind of more than Firefox had and definitely more than Google has natively as well. I like dark and stormy personally because I like kind of darker web pages. I just think the contrast makes it easier to see things. You could also, however, choose the system default or dark options as well. Personally, I like dark and stormy on a light background. You can also directly control your zoom levels from Appearance, as well as showing vertical tabs for current browser windows if you wanted. I'm going to hit turn on just to kind of show you what it means. But what it means is all of your tabs can be displayed right over here instead of at the top of your web page. So I'm going to go to Google, and I can jump back and forth between all of these tabs here. If I go back to settings and turn off vertical tabs, now you can see they're stored back up here at the top of my browser. In addition to that, you have a lot of other options through your Appearance settings. You can add a history button. You can add a downloads button, which is actually something I recommend. It just lets you access all of the things you've downloaded pretty quickly. You can also add a performance button to see what kind of things it's working on, and even a math solver button, which I actually really like. This is basically just a learn to solve math problems, but it can also actually be used as a calculator if you hit type a math problem. So if I'm trying to figure out something real quick, I can just hit the calculator button within my browser. I don't have to pull up a separate calculator app. I can just type like 5 times 30, and I know that it's 150. But they have a lot of different little icons and things that you can use to customize your web experience through the Appearance tab. You can also change font size right here directly from Appearance. If you don't like this little sidebar feature, you can even just turn it off directly from the sidebar setting. And you can customize your home page from the Start, Home, and New tab options right in here. When a new tab opens, well, this is what it does when Microsoft Edge starts. It says open the new tab page. You can also, however, choose open these pages, add a new page. We're going to add www.crnstone.com and hit add. And now when I open up Microsoft Edge again, it'll open up to Cornerstone's web page. We'll do that here in a second. There are a lot of other settings down through here, but the main ones that I wanted to cover here real quick are cookies and site permissions, which let you manually choose what type of permissions all sites will have directly when you open them. And it also lets you delete your cookies and site data. You can also make Edge your default browser. Most web browsers have this default browser setting right here. And if I just hit make default, I can make it my default option. One thing to note though is that if you're using an older computer and you have Microsoft Internet Explorer, it's now out of date. I mentioned that before. But what I really mean is Microsoft is no longer supporting that browser. What that means is if you call in and say, hey, I'm using Internet Explorer, I have a problem, they will say, hey, that's really great, download Edge, instead of helping you with your issue. So that is something to keep in mind. If you haven't already changed over to using Edge, I would recommend it if your computer can support it. You can also access the Downloads tab directly right over here. And what that does is it tells the browser what to do with your downloads. Natively, all your downloads will go to your user download folder. That's what this location right here is. But you can actually have it, prompt you every time what you want to do with it, or you can change the default folder just by hitting change right over here and then navigating to somewhere else and hitting select folder. For instance, if I go to this PC's desktop and hit select folder here, now whenever I download something, it'll go directly to my desktop. You can also edit all of the languages and options right in here. I will say Edge is probably the best browser for native language changing options as far as my opinion is concerned. And you can also change different system and performance settings directly from this settings tab as well. Just to show you that I did change that homepage, I'm going to reopen Microsoft Edge. And as you can see, it now opened to www.crnstone.com. Like I said before, you can add multiple web pages. So if you wanted it to open up like 5 or 6 different ones when you open up your browser, you can do that for any of them. Just add different URLs. And that just about covers most of our walkthroughs. That being said, though, I did want to talk about a few other browsers. Now, I don't have them installed because walking through a lot of browsers would take up a lot of your and I's time. But I did want to mention some honorable mentions. Each of these browsers has about under 1% of the user market worldwide. So calling them popular is a bit of a stretch, but when you're competing against a 77% market share and the only other 2 browsers that even get close to 10% are Firefox and Safari, we're going to be a little open-ended when we say popular. One of the ones that I like is Opera. It has a lot of integrated functions on the pinned taskbar, which is kind of like those side views that we were seeing in Edge. But one of the things I like about it is you can install it on a USB, plug it into any computer, and you just have a browser ready to go. So if you're using a machine that doesn't really have one installed, then you can just have a USB in your pocket with a browser. It's not really very useful. It's just a neat little feature. A lot of computers do have web browsers integrated nowadays. The other one is Vivaldi, which is very similar to Opera, but it makes its bank, I guess, or it makes it very differentiated because it is a Chromium browser that is run by Opera and also allows you to very directly customize your web browsing experience. And by that, I mean you can change individual section looks. So you can basically create your own theme directly. You don't have to just click on a theme that Google recommends you or that is integrated as part of your browser. You can change the different colors and looks of each individual part of the browser directly. And you can pin web pages to your home page, so you can customize what web pages you can get to pretty much directly. Another honorable mention is Brave. Brave is one that I think most people who are really into cryptocurrency use. It has an integrated crypto wallet directly as part of the browser. It also has privacy extensions and ad blockers installed natively when you download Brave. DuckDuckGo, which is the search engine we were also using, makes their own browser. It is relatively secure and does not store your sites. So if you're trying to go to a bunch of different websites, don't expect it to save your login information. Don't expect it to save the sites you visit. But for what small amount of data that it does store, it also has a burn button in the upper right-hand corner. If you hit the burn button, then it automatically deletes all of the data that you've ever had with the browser entirely, and you start fresh. So if you're very concerned about, internet security, it's not a bad browser to have. It's also sometimes used as a dark web browser, though. So be careful where you're going with that one. And finally, there's Aloha. And Aloha is a mobile browser exclusive. That means it's something you can only install on mobile devices. Well, you can install it on other devices, but it's not recommended. One of the neat things about Aloha is it has an integrated VPN. So if you are using Aloha on your smartphone and say, wanted to see what that website looks like from China, then you can use Aloha to go to a server in China, and it will show you their Chinese version. One interesting thing about it is you can use that VPN for more than just the browser, but it does cost money. It is a premium feature. What that means is if you pay them, you can just use their VPN for everything. But if not, that's fine. You just get to use the VPN for web browsing, which is pretty neat as well and very secure. That being said, thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. I'm going to go over some of these right now. And also feel free to reach out to me directly if you don't feel like asking them immediately. My phone number is up there on the screen, and my email address is there as well, tlevine@sierraandstone.com. Thank you very much for attending today's Tech Tuesday, and I hope you learned something new. Thank you.